Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really digging into the art and science of negotiation.
Yeah, we're drawing heavily from Charles Craver's book, The Intelligent Negotiator. Great stuff in there.
It really is. And the aim here is, well, to equip you, the learner, with practical strategies.
Things you can actually use, right? Whether
Mhm.
it's um, asking for a raise, buying a car.
Or even just haggling with, a repair shop. We want to give you actionable techniques, not just theory.
And Craver's book is perfect for that. It pulls together ideas from like psychology, communication, law, business.
Plus his own experience, right, with
Yeah.
students and professionals in actual negotiations. Loads of real-world examples.
Exactly. It's really rich.
So our mission today is basically to boil all that down, find those key nuggets for you,
A shortcut, kind of, to being a smarter negotiator.
without drowning you in information, we promise. Lots of surprising facts and solid advice coming up.
Okay, so where do we start? Craver talks about three basic negotiating styles.
Right. First up is the competitive adversarial style.
Think win-lose.
Yeah, like a tug of war. For me to win, you have to lose. That's the mindset.
They see the pie as fixed. Any slice you get means less for them.
So a concession feels like a defeat.
Definite. Craver uses the example of like a really tough opening offer in a labor negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
That's classic adversarial thinking.
Recognizing that style in the person across the table is step one, yeah.
Absolutely. Then you have the opposite, pretty much. The cooperative problem-solving style.
This is more win-win. Let's find a solution that works for both of us.
It's about baking a bigger pie together, not just fighting over the existing one.
Requires more open communication, building some trust.
Totally. Think a supplier and a regular client working together. Maybe they figure out a more efficient process that saves them both money. Shared goals.
But it's not always one or the other, is it? Life's messier.
Right. And that's where Craver brings in the third style, the innovator.
Someone who blends the two.
Exactly. They can be competitive when needed, cooperative when possible. They read the situation, read the other person.
Like a chef, knowing when to turn up the heat and when to just let things simmer.
Good analogy. They're strategic. And crucially, Craver points out that even cooperators need to be firm sometimes.
So being cooperative doesn't mean being a pushover.
Not at all. The ability to say no clearly and credibly is vital for everyone.
That's a really important takeaway. Okay, so those are the styles. But before you even figure out who you're dealing with, preparation.
Oh, yeah. Huge. Craver really hammers this home.
It sounds obvious, maybe, but skipping it is, well, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
And his advice on prep is deep. It's not just, what do I want?
It's also, what do they want?
Yes, tangible things like price, but also the intangible stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Underlying needs, maybe pressures they're under. You got to think about all that.
And he talks about adding items to the table.
Yeah, the more things you're negotiating over, the more chances for trade-offs.
Moving away from just fighting over one number.
Exactly. It encourages that cooperative bargaining, finding creative solutions.
And part of prep is knowing the value of those items.
Research. Absolutely critical. If you're buying a car, you check comparable prices, right?
Same for salary talks. Look at industry data. What similar roles pay?
Know your worth. And be ready to explain why you're worth it. That's foundational.
Okay, so we've got the styles, the critical need for prep, identifying wants, values, expanding the pie. Lots to think about already.
It really sets the stage.
All right, let's take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll jump into what happens when the talking actually starts. The information exchange, reading the room. Stay with us.
And we're back on the deep dive, talking intelligent negotiation. Before the break, we covered negotiating styles and the absolute must of preparation.
Right, knowing your goals, their potential goals, your walkaway point.
So now the negotiation itself begins. Craver says, first thing, try to figure out who you're dealing with. Adversary, cooperator, innovator.
Yeah, that early read helps you, adjust your own approach. If you sense it's purely win-lose for them.
You brace yourself a bit. Prepare for more assertive tactics. Pretty much. But if you sense they're open to collaboration, you can lean into that. Foster that problem-solving vibe.
But, like we said, even with a cooperator, you can't just roll over.
No way. Being friendly doesn't mean you agree to everything. You still need your own boundaries.
That firm but respectful no we talked about, still essential.
Always. And linking back to prep, that BDTNA concept, best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Your plan B. what you'll do if you don't reach a deal.
Knowing that gives you strength. It tells you when walking away is actually your best option.
And trying to figure out their BETNA, that's gold if you can get a sense of it.
Huge advantage. Okay, so discussion starts. Craver puts massive emphasis on the information exchange stage.
Resisting the urge to just start making offers immediately.
Right. This is where you learn, ask questions, listen.
And what kind of questions?
Good point. Open-ended questions are key. Why is that important to you? Can you tell me more about things that get them talking?
Not just yes-no stuff. You want them to share their perspective, their needs.
Exactly. Every answer is a piece of the puzzle. You learn without giving away too much yourself, ideally.
And listening. Not just waiting for your turn to talk. Active listening.
Yeah, and listening for what Craver calls verbal leaks.
Those little slips of the tongue.
Kind of like someone saying, well, I'd like to get $5,000 versus I need to get $5,000.
Big difference in firmness there. One sounds like a wish, the other a requirement.
Precisely. It signals their flexibility or lack thereof. You got to tune into those subtleties.
And then there's the nonverbal stuff, body language.
Yeah, don't ignore that. Craver talks about it. Crossed arms, maybe leaning back. Could signal they're not really buying what you're selling.
Or avoiding eye contact, fidgeting.
Could be discomfort, could be resistance. Is another layer of information you're gathering.
What about detecting if someone's not being straight with you? Lying.
Tricky area. Craver touches on it. Says there's no foolproof Pinocchio effect, you know.
Right, no single telltale sign.
But he does mention things sometimes associated with stress or deception, like maybe increased blinking, vocal pitch changes, more ums and ahs than usual.
Speech errors, maybe tripping over words.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you got to be careful. People get stressed in negotiations anyway.
True, so it's not proof, just a flag, something that makes you maybe ask a few more questions.
Exactly. A reason to probe a bit deeper, maybe verify things independently if you can. Don't jump to conclusions.
Okay, so you've asked, you've listened, you've observed, gathered intel. Now comes the part people often think of as negotiation, the distributive stage.
Right, the bargaining. Dividing the pie, essentially. This is where it can feel more competitive.
Because you're trying to claim value, get the best price, the best terms for your side.
And Craver says, look, while win-win is great overall, sometimes in this stage you have to adapt if they're playing hardball.
You can't just keep being purely cooperative or you'll get taken advantage of.
You might need to be more assertive yourself. Protect your interests.
But even here, even when it's competitive, he suggests using objective criteria.
Yes. This is so useful. Instead of just saying, I want X, you say, the market value for this is Y, or industry standard is Z.
Takes some of the personal element out of it, makes it less arbitrary.
Totally. It grounds the discussion in facts, in external benchmarks. Much harder for the other side to just dismiss.
Makes your position seem more reasonable, more defensible.
Leads to fairer outcomes, often. Okay, so Craver also gets into specific techniques people use.
Right, the tactics, like making concessions strategically, not just giving things away.
Using humor, maybe. Flattery sometimes. Building rapport.
Yeah, having a toolkit, basically, knowing different ways to influence the dynamic.
A bit of humor can ease tension, definitely. A genuine compliment might help. But he also warns about some tactics to watch out for.
Like what?
Well, the last-minute nibble. You think you've got a deal, and suddenly they ask for one more small thing.
Ugh, annoying. Tries to squeeze a bit more out when you're ready to sign.
Exactly. And the absent authority ploy.
Oh, where they say, this looks good, but I just need to get my boss partner committee to approve it, and that person is conveniently unavailable.
Yeah. It's often a way to stall or to come back later, asking for more concessions. Be wary of that one.
Good tips. Now, the end game. Closing the deal. Craver has a key piece of advice here.
Patience.
Don't rush it.
Cannot stress this enough. He says a surprising number of concessions happen right at the very end.
When people are tired, maybe eager to just get it done.
If you seem too eager, you might miss out. He tells a story, I think, about a huge deal, billions, where impatience at the close cost one side a fortune.
Wow. So hang in there, stay focused right till the end.
Okay, so let's say you have reached a tentative agreement. But Craver says there might be one more stage.
Yeah, a potential cooperative stage after the main agreement.
Like exploring if there are any final tweaks that could make the deal even better for both sides. Value creation still.
Exactly. Maybe some small adjustments or additions you didn't think of earlier that are low cost for one side, but high value for the other.
But he warns, you got to be clear about this, right?
Absolutely. You need to signal Okay, we have a deal, but let's just brainstorm for a minute anyway to make this even better for both of us.
Otherwise, if you just start suggesting new stuff, they might think you're backtracking or being sneaky.
Could undermine the trust you just built. So clear communication is key for that optional stage.
Got it. And then the final step. Before the ink dries,
Read the written agreement carefully, meticulously.
don't just skim it. Every word matters.
Make sure it perfectly matches what you think you agreed on. Catch any errors, any ambiguities.
Or sometimes things that might have been deliberately misrepresented.
It's your last chance to avoid misunderstandings or, bad faith claims later on. Protect yourself.
Solid advice all the way through.
Okay, wow, we've covered a lot of ground from the Intelligent Negotiator. Let's maybe try and quickly recap the big takeaways.
Good idea. So first, those negotiating styles. Understanding if you're up against an adversary, a cooperator, or an innovator really helps you frame your own strategy.
And remember, even if someone seems cooperative, you still need to be prepared to stand your ground. That credible no is always in your back pocket.
Then preparation. Can't say it enough. It's the foundation. Know your goals, figure out their likely goals, know your BAT&A, your walkaway plan.
And do the research to understand the value of everything being discussed. Be strategic about what info you share and what you hold back.
During the actual talk, that information exchange is critical. Ask good, open-ended questions. Really listen to the answers.
Watch for those verbal leaks, those little tells in how they phrase things, and pay attention to nonverbal cues too. Body language matters.
And while spotting deception is hard, be aware of potential stress indicators. Not proof, but maybe reason to dig a bit deeper.
When you get to the distributive stage where you're dividing things up, be ready for it to feel more competitive. Adapt your style.
And use objective criteria, market value, standards to back up your position. Makes it much stronger.
Be aware of the different tactics people might use, both positive, like humor, and potentially negative, like the last-minute nibble or absent authority.
Patience at the end. Don't rush the closing. Lots can happen in those final moments.
If you try for that post-agreement cooperative tweak, make sure everyone understands what's happening. Clear communication.
And finally, always, always, always review the written agreement thoroughly before you sign. No exceptions.
Phew. Okay, so that's a whirlwind tour of intelligent negotiation.
Yeah, lots you can apply there. So maybe here's something for you, the listener, to chew on.
A final provocative thought.
Yeah. Think about the last negotiation you were in. Big or small, doesn't matter. What style did the other person mostly use? What style did you use?
Were there maybe verbal clues or nonverbal signals that you see now you might have missed at the time?
Couldn't understanding those have changed anything. And thinking ahead, if you focus on just one thing we talked about today, maybe better preparation or asking more open-ended questions.
How might that change how you approach your next negotiation?
It's something to reflect on. Applying even one insight can make a real difference.
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll catch you on the next one.